Since the dawn of the GAA in 1884, the telling of its stories have been just as important as the sports. Through the years, heroes and matches have been immortalised, inspiring generation after generation. But some of its most important stories have also gotten lost or turned into legend. And in this series, we will explore some of the GAA's most fascinating forgotten tales, separating rumour from reality and myth from the truth that is often more amazing than the fiction. I'm Michael Foley.
And I'm Ciaran O'Hara.
So join us for Over the Bar, exploring the histories of the GAA.
Love GAA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
G.A. Cordia Gael, and welcome to the latest edition of Over the Bar, the Gaelic Games History Podcast. Every so often we find ourselves coming back to consequential Congress. Is that the plural?
We've had this.
Is it Congrai?
It could be Congresses, it could be Congrai. I have to say, and I don't want to criticise too heavily your intro, or start giving you notes while we're actually recording the episode. But do you think that referring to interesting congresses or congrai is the kind of thing that's going to draw in a listener? Do you really? A GA Congress is something that people want to hear about?
Well, I don't know. There was a lot of talk about one over the last week or two.
True enough. And you know what? That wasn't even the wildest one. But we'll have to come back to that another day. People think the 2026 Congress is a shoe-in to be the wildest Congress of all time. Let me tell you this much, Ciaran.
No. I told people this week, shots were once fired.
The 1887 Congress, when it hears this, says, hold my beer. But we will come back to the 1887 Congress. Sorry, I'm cutting across you. I would say Congresses, because Congrai just sounds weird.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, in any event, I don't want to, as you rightly say, it's not going to draw in the masses. But stay with us, folks. It is worth it, because my question to you today, Michael, is when was the high point of the Railway Cup? And the reason that I alluded to consequential congresses
nicely done.
was that it was born of a quite consequential Congress. Now, there's a tongue twister. The little things on Bosco, get your heads around that.
I can see his neck coming down now after achieving that one. Nice work. Listen, Congresses by their nature should be boring. They shouldn't be more interesting than the games. But stuff gets decided at Congress, like competitions, like national leagues, like football and hurling playing rules, like competitions. So, you have to keep your eyes open for what's going on there as well. The very short answer to your question, what was the high point of the Railway Cup? For anybody, under the age of, what age would you be that you would not know what the Railway Cup is? If you're in your mid-teens, or maybe your mid-teens, you might be sure what the Railway Cup is, would you?
I'd imagine we have listeners out there in their 30s and 40s that don't really know what the Railway Cup is. Like, even when it was brought back for the FRC for the sandbox games, did they even call it the Railway Cup? They kind of just...
They didn't
it was an interprovincial sandbox.
Exactly. They didn't saddle it with the negative brand of the Railway Cup. No, they wanted to give it a fresh start. So, first of all, the Railway Cup was the interprovincial competition that existed for roughly 90 years or so, in various shapes and forms. Then the high point of this interprovincial competition, which became known as the Railway Cup, short answer, Ciaran, was 1954. But to get to the peak, and by the way, when we get to the peak, it is such an insight into how the GA saw itself, its relationship with the media, all sorts of, and the outside world, really. It's a real insight. But to get to that and to understand that, we need to go right back to the birth of the Railway Cup, which brings us back to the very significant Congress that you're talking about. It's 1926. right? 1926. And at that Congress, yes, the Cork County Board brought this idea of an interprovincial competition. Now, they were kind of jumping off the back of a competition that existed before called the Railway Shield, which was back between 1905 and 1908 when the Great Southern Western Railway, or is it the Great South Western Railway, whichever, the GSW Railway Company anyway.
It sounds like something you'd add to food now.
It's like a crew that Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid would have blown up. The GSW Railway Company. I'm not opening. I can't do it, Mr. Cassidy. I can't open this door. Well, we're going to blow it up. So anyway, 2 shields for football and hurling interprovincial competitions in 1905 to 1908. They included the oddity that if one team won the shield 3 times, they could keep the shield, which happened inside of 4 competitions. I think it was Munster won maybe the hurling 3 times. Anyway, they didn't replace the shield. So the football kind of went quickly afterwards as well. So by 1908, the Railway Shield was gone. So they were kind of piggybacking on an old idea. But in 26, they said, yeah, let's what about this thing? And it came at an interesting time for the GA because what was happening, and this was very much played out at Congress, the GA were suffering under the weight of a lot of, I'm going to say bad press, but more so general derision. And this, like we often say, Ciaran, these episodes just come around to things over and over again. And I will direct people for about the 3rd time, I would say, in our short life, to the 1925 All-Ireland Football Championship that ended in a complete heap with Galway winning the All-Ireland football title in the committee room, swiping it from Mayo's grasp, who won it after 1 game. So we just park that. Go and listen to that episode. That entire year, which was a complete fiasco, left this impression that the GA could not organise themselves out of a paper bag. They were incompetent. They couldn't run their competitions properly. There was constant objections and disputes. The whole thing was run in a really poor way.
There was a sense that they couldn't organise the proverbial you-know-what up in St. James's Gate.
Frankly, the evidence suggested that they might have struggled. One effect of this was that the press were, naturally enough, attracted to stories and attracted to those kind of stories of kind of disorganisation and wrote articles criticising the GA for this lack of organisation and wondered whether this organisation had a future at all if they couldn't get their act together and actually run their competitions on time, which, to be fair, would have been, I would have thought. I like, if I was a member of the GA wandering around the place, down the country, watching this going on, I'd be wondering the same myself. Like, would I be better off throwing my hand in with another sport and actually having a schedule of games that actually works?
Yeah, I mean, this might be a stretch for you now, but I'm going to ask you to throw yourself into the position of the newspaper man.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, the newspaper man, if he's going to hire a correspondent, he wants to know that guy is busy. He wants to know that the juice is worth the squeeze. And if every time he says to him any match report this weekend, no, it's been put off again because of, it becomes a hard sell for the editor.
It becomes a hard sell for the editor. It becomes a very hard sell for the correspondent who, as you say, I mean, you never like to say as a journalist, paper never refuses ink, because you do actually put some care and thought into what you put down on the page. But it does come to a point where you do have to, if there's no games to talk about, you have to deal with the issue of the day. And the issue is, why are there no games? So their criticism will come. But this really went down badly with the GAA, unsurprisingly. So once the 1925 championship had been sorted, even when it wasn't sorted and they were still trudging through it, by April 26, they are coming out fighting. And at this Congress in 1926, there is enormous criticism of the press coverage. There's a Congress resolution demanding, quote, fair play to be accorded our games by the press, and that we instruct Central Council to take whatever action they consider necessary in 3 months. So basically the press, they were saying to the press, you've got 3 months to get your act together, in our view, which is give us proper coverage, cover our games, give us due credit for what we're trying to do and what we're achieving, and less of the negativity. Like, the contributions are, they're unsurprising. There's a delegate from Kildare who suggests withdrawing advertising from the newspapers if they don't kind of pull into line. William Clifford, who will be elected the next GA president on this very day, said the press seemed to think that if they repeated, quote, often enough that the GAA was on its last legs, it was bound to have a certain effect on the public. Canon Hamilton, Ciaran, one of our
Canon Hamilton,
one of our favourite Congress delegates of all time, the man who brought the All-Ireland football final to New York.
The fibbing friar, as I like to call him.
The fibbing friar, the man who brought a fake letter from a weeping New York emigre pleading for the All-Ireland football final in 1947 and somehow got it over the line. He says, and this goes to the heart of it, really. The press stood for everything foreign and specially opposed to GAA because it was made up of the common people. Opposed to the GAA because the GAA is made up of the common people, I mean. And I think that speaks to the sort of the institutional lack of understanding on both sides of how this works. Like the GAA, by this point, 1926, has spent most of its life trying to get what they would say is a fair crack from the media. And on the other side, the media are trying to get their head around this organisation. And like up to this very day, Ciaran, this is a discussion for an entirely different podcast. But I do think that institutional misunderstanding remains. That, you know, there is, without a doubt, I think, at the higher levels of the media, a fundamental misunderstanding to some point about how the GAA works, operates, and so on. Now, I think that's changing as the years go on. But And vice versa from the GA point of view. They see the media as something apart from it. It's to be kept at arm's length, and that's probably the best way to have it. And maybe they're right. Maybe a bit of friction is always good. Anyway, the Cork delegate takes the opportunity to rip into the Cork Examiner and mentions, by the way, that Cork County Board had actually sued a journalist for something they had written about Cork GA in the course of the year. Sean McCarthy, Ciaran, another friend of the podcast. Sean McCarthy, future GA president, the man who went and collected the Cork red jerseys when the old blue with the yellow C had been taken by Crown forces from Cook Street in 1919. The man who will propose the name of the Cusack stand. He said the press's problem was that the GA were Irish. Again, more of this us and them. If their attitude didn't change, he said, withdraw the adverts and exclude them from matches, bar the journalists from coming.
Well, that'll get you more publicity for sure.
Well, it'll work either way. And we did an episode quite recently, in fact, last week, about the 1968 All-Ireland final and the media blowout there was around the 1968 league final between Tip and Kilkenny, when the media were blackballed by Tip and subsequently refused to mention Tip by name and call them you know who. So this stuff never works. Like when you got two irresistible forces pushing against each other, it's not going to work. The incumbent GA president, P.D. Breen, who was about to be overtaken by William Clifford in an hour or two after this, said the GA had, by this point, it's interesting to hear this, was catering for over 1,200 affiliated clubs by 1926. That's a lot. He said every member should stand shoulder to shoulder, his words, not Phil Coulter's, and let proprietors know the GA catered for the popular taste while the press catered for others. So they're laying it out, they're coming out on the front foot, and they have good reason to, Ciaran, because they also showed a £3,000 profit on the year that year. So which I find absolutely astounding. Yes.
Given that we have talked about the number of bloody matches that were called off in the 1925 championship. I'd have thought the only ones making profit were the Connacht Council with their record number of championship matches.
I find it baffling myself. Maybe they're putting everything together. I don't know. But the mortgage on Croke Park is reduced significantly that year. And they actually mentioned it's not as good a year though as 1924, Ciaran, because that year they had the famous rodeo in Croke Park, not just the Tailteann Games.
We will be coming back to that. We
will have to, because they made, now, £3,000 profit on the year in 1926 or 1925. In 1924, they made £1,288 alone on the rodeo. That's like 4 Ed Sheeran gigs now. It must have been huge. But anyway, we're drifting. My point is that this is the scenario for the Railway Cup to be coming into. The national leagues have also just been installed the year before. They're getting going. So the GA is pushing out now. It's trying to create new competitions. It's trying to put its best foot forward. And the interprovincial competitions are part of that.
All right. So how does it begin? Is it a runaway success straight away? My sense of it is this is an organisation that would like to make be in control centrally of competitions because they might be receiving gates from those competitions.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. So the more national competitions we can have, the more goes straight into the central coffers, precisely. So April 26th, do you notice here, we've stumbled onto another centenary, like. It's almost exactly 100 years since they decided to create what became known as the Railway Cups. There we go.
Well, happy birthday, Railway Cup.
If you can hear us from your shallow grave. So to be fair to the old Great Southern and Western Railway Company, they stumped up 2 more cups in July 1926 and 2 sets of gold medals for the football and hurling competitions. The original hurling trophy, by the way, is now in the GA Museum, and the football trophy, the last time I checked anyway, it was in the Ulster GA offices in Armagh.
Is that because there's some rule that if you win it 10 times in a row, you get to keep it?
Well, I mean, look, you know what? Given the attention and the respect that Ulster gave the football competition for years after everybody else stopped caring, they deserve to have that trophy. So the very first ever game actually was on the 21st of November 1926, which would have been the 6th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. I think that was just a coincidence, to be fair, but it was a hurling semi-final between Leinster and Connacht, which ended 7-6 to 3-5 in favour of Leinster down in Portlaoise. But in a kind of a portent of things to come, there were some things that we'll see happening a lot up the years. So the Connacht team was entirely Galway. And on the Leinster side, some players just didn't rock up. So a bunch of Mooncoin players in Kilkenny just didn't show up to the game. So they had to shuffle the team at the last minute. But that was fine. They got it done. The final for the hurling was on St. Patrick's Day in 1927. And Leinster beat Munster in that, 111 to 2-6. Ulster, by the way, in case anyone was wondering, didn't enter the hurling competition until 1944. But there was you're asking, is it going to be an immediate success? 10,000 people turned up to the first Railway Cup finals.
Okay, that's success, I would say.
Yeah. And just by the way, the football, before I forget, my God, Munster won the first football title, also played on the Patrick's Day of 1927. Munster, by the way, an entirely Kerry team, no Corkman, no Tip, Clare, Waterford, etc. They beat Connacht 2-3 to 5 points. By the way, the Connacht footballers trained especially for that competition. They trained in Ballinasloe. So, I mean, there was a little something attached to it from the beginning.
And we're seeing it lodged there in St. Patrick's Day, which did become its traditional home, if I'm correct.
You are absolutely correct. From the beginning, St. Patrick's Day. And by the following year, it's being called the Railway Cup. Year 1, it's kind of like the interprovincial competitions. But from 1928, the newspapers are calling it the Railway Cup. And there's 15,000 at the 28 finals.
Love GEA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
At the risk now of boggling the audience with figures, which we would really try not to do, but the reality of the story of the Railway Cup is it is a story about attendances and the kind of the undulating interest. Because ultimately, what brings the Railway Cup down, why we don't have it anymore, is because people stopped going. So the numbers that do turn up are significant as we go along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go decade by decade from 1927, just to give a sense of the progression. So 1927, 10,000 people. 1937, there's nearly 15,000 at it. Munster win the hurling, Connacht win the football. We move on to 1947. Now, the big freeze at the beginning of 1947, at the end of 1946, kind of screws everything up. So it's a bit of a mess. There's a Railway Cup hurling semi-final played on the 15th of March, so there's no St. Patrick's Day kind of gala event. Munster, by the way, the score of this Railway Cup semi-final, hurling, Munster 9-7, Ulster no score. I mean, what would you be at, But anyway, so the hurling final is pushed out till the 6th of April, and Connacht actually win. It's their first interprovincial title. They beat Munster, and there's just under 20,000 people at it, 19,120. Bringing us back to Canon Hamilton, Ciaran. that was the same day the GA Congress was in Croke Park.
They adjourned for the Railway Cup finals.
Exactly, they did.
This is the day the cannon produced the letter.
In inverted commas. Absolutely. And by the way, do you know what came up that day as well in 1947? Again, very relevant to the future of the Railway Cup. Limerick brought a proposal to create an All-Ireland Club Championship. Now, it didn't take root in 1947, but that's the first time I've ever come across a reference.
And it is going to take away St. Patrick's Day at some stage.
It is, and it is going to play a role. So 47, as I say, a bit of a funny year, but we're up to 19,120 by 57. And as I said, the peak was 54. We'll come back. 43,803 in Croke Park for the double header. Massive. And you know, like 1956 was huge as well. It was just under the 45,000. So huge. Even then, you go on to 67, still 30,000, right? So 30,000 in 1967. But see what happens next. 1977, 4,034 people in Croke Park for the games.
Okay, now we're getting to the Railway Cup that I know.
Something happens between the 60s and the 70s, and we will return to that. And by 1987, it's not only almost gone from Croke Park. Well, it's not quite gone from Croke Park, to be fair. It's certainly gone from St. Patrick's Day. And 1987 is actually the first year that the All-Ireland Club finals are installed as a double header on St. Patrick's Day. The Railway Cup is played on the weekend of the 3rd and 4th of October. There's less than 1,000 people at the semi-finals in Newbridge for the football. The Railway Shield, our old friend from 1905, is reintroduced for the beaten semi-finalists. Why they would do that, I don't know.
Oh, Lord.
Why they would make more games when no one wants to see...
Had there not been enough FIFA World Cups for them to know? Nobody wants to play in a third place match.
So you've got 5,000 people at the hurling final in Ennis in 1987 and just barely 2,000 at the football final in Newbridge. So that's where we're at. But to go back to your question, the peak, it's 1954. And it's a good point now. Well, so why? Why was that its peak time? Well, I think looking back, because I mean, there are a number of reasons always put out there as to why the Railway Cup fell, but why was it so popular? I think the one huge thing was that the national leagues didn't, even after by 1954, they're not quite 30 years old. They're nearly 30 years old, but they don't quite have the standing that they even have, certainly not that they have now. But even when we used to be criticising them 20, 30 years ago for the state of the leagues, they were even more discarded, it seems, in this era. Like the Railway Cup, Ciaran, was seen as the start of the season. This was when you went out to see the best players and see how they were going.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the thing of it is and this is pre-All-Stars, don't forget. Like, these are All-Star teams. You potentially can have, particularly in hurling, if you have a good Munster team, you could have the creme de la creme lining out together.
Oh, they're dazzling. I mean, the names, I mean, you know, they're absolutely dazzling. Just, I mean, for anyone who's into their 1950s hurling in particular, just think of the best Tipperary, Cork, Waterford, Limerick and Clare hurlers you can think of right now, and they're all mixed in together. I mean, Christy Ring would have often said that Matt Nugent from Clare was one of the best players he ever played with, particularly for the way he delivered the ball. He seemed to just know the type of ball that Ring loved to get, you know, without ever really playing with him, only on these one-offs with Munster. The other things, obviously, you know, and this went on through the years, and it was kind of replicated a little bit with the international rules. Players from smaller counties who didn't get to All-Ireland finals and provincial finals, they loved the Railway Cup because it was their opportunity to play alongside the best guys and get a huge day in Croke Park and so on. Now, by the way, the semi-finals were always played outside Croke Park. Only Croke Park for the finals. That was kind of like your reward. But in terms of popularity for the public, there was no television, right? There is no club championship. The opportunity to see these guys in the flesh outside of, you know, the league games that people are attending but not really in their droves, or the championship games which they are attending in their droves, are few and far between, as you say. And there's no all-stars. You know, it's just a completely different era. I remember, and even from the point of view of the players, there was personal pride there. Like, I remember interviewing Tony Wall many, many years ago about the Railway Cup, and he told me that the players always trained independently. They mightn't have a collective thing going on, but they'd be ready for the Railway Cup. I remember there was a man called Dave O'Brien, God rest him. He was the president of Glen Rovers for many years, but he was great friends with Ring. And on that kind of generation, he would have driven
Jack
cars.
Lynch.
Yeah, yes, he certainly would have been that era. He might have been slightly younger than Jack, but it would have been, just that group. But he would have driven cars, we'll say, to matches and brought the lads to games and all this. So he was around the scene. And I remember him telling me that he went to a Railway Cup final in 1953 where Sean Herbert from Limerick was picked from Munster. And there was actually a lot of speculation in the papers about whether Sean Herbert was good enough to be playing for Munster or not. So there was some criticism of it. And he said he remembered meeting Herbert in Ring and Jim Tough Barry, the famous Cork trainer's company. The three lads were together with Herbert. And Herbert saying that he never in his life trained harder for any match than that game with Munster to prove that he was worth his place on the team. So that just gives you a sense of the importance of these things. Now, one of the things that was also a staple was live radio coverage of the Railway Cup on Radio Éireann. St. Patrick's Day, if you weren't at the parade in Dublin and among the walk-up crowd going into Croke Park, you were probably tuned into the wireless listening to the games. In 1954, something happened, Ciaran. And this is why I mentioned all the media stuff at the beginning from 1926. So only 26 years later. But it gives you a sense of where the GAA were at this point and what their position, or at least their perceived position in Irish life. So on the same day, on Patrick's Day at Dalymount Park, a League of Ireland selection was playing a Scottish League selection. Now, the way that games were being worked out, right? The football final was on in Croke Park first. So they could broadcast that on, I suppose, what would you call it? The home frequency. It was called Radio Athlone. So you could tune into that for the football, right?
I presume because the transmitter was in Athlone or something.
I'm assuming that. And then it fitted for the schedulers to have the soccer on next on Radio Athlone. But if you wanted to listen to the hurling, it was only a matter of tuning to the magnificently named Radio Brazzaville, to the international frequency.
Okay.
Did Radio Éireann
did 2RN have a transmitter in Brazzaville is what I'm wondering now.
They needed the help of the Democratic Republic of Congo to get the Railway Cup hurling broadcast around the place. That's all I know. So that was the plan. Right? But the GAA objected absolutely fiercely to this. The notion that the hurling was being usurped by soccer on the national wavelength, right? On the national station. And that you would have to tweak your wireless to listen to the hurling. They wouldn't actually even allow updates of the soccer game if they switched the hurling to Radio Athlone. So Radio Éireann said, well, if we put the game on Radio Athlone on the main frequency, we'll just do updates and maybe at half time or we'll do some. No, they said no, nothing. You just cannot do that. So this, of course, is this is talk about exceptionalism and entitlement. This is the GAA saying that's our spot. It's been our spot for 20 whatever many years now, 26 years or so like that, 25 years. We're not giving it up. And why should we give it up to a foreign game? Now, the director of Radio Éireann is a fascinating chap called Maurice Gorham. Now, Maurice Gorham was born in London, Ciaran. He's an Oxford-educated broadcaster who had huge experience broadcasting with the BBC.
And he's not going to know the handshake for the boys in Croke Park.
Well, you'll remember I mentioned about the possible gap between the media understanding of the GAA and the GAA's understanding of the media. And this is an example of it. Now, Maurice Gorham was an outstanding broadcaster and administrator by all accounts. He wrote a very interesting book in 1967, a memoir of his time working in broadcasting. There was one great line in it. He recalled joining. He's only in the job a year. He joined in 1953. But there was a wonderful line about the studios. They were in the GPO at this point. And he said one lift in the GPO going up and down to the Radio Éireann studios seemed to be, quote, full of boys carrying trays of buns all the time. So he had this sense of it, of being a bit of a fairly relaxed kind of clientele, a fairly relaxed climate for radio. But he was looking at this and going, well, they're not going to dictate to us what we can broadcast or not. So he sent a letter, and it said, I have received your letter of March 10th to the GA, this is now. And I'm very sorry to see that the GA will not allow us to broadcast the hurling final overseas as we had arranged. I understand the only condition on which your executive would withdraw this ban is if we cancel the broadcast from Dalymount Park, which he had planned for this wavelength. And I can only say that we cannot let the GA decide for us what other sports we should or should not broadcast and at what time. I also understand from you that your executive will not permit us to broadcast a commentary on the hurling final on the Athlone wavelength, that's the local wavelength, if we use the time free at the interval to report on the match at Dalymount Park. If this is so, I'm afraid we should be left with no broadcast from Croke Park except that of the Gaelic football match, a position I very greatly regret. Signed, Oxford Don Morris Gorham. No, he didn't sign it that way, but that, so that's how it's been perceived. Now, what do you make of that, Ciaran?
Yeah, I totally understand where he's coming from, because they are entitled to their editorial independence, etc., etc. I can only imagine how it was received in Croke Park.
Would you like to hear how it was received?
Oh, yes.
Here's the reply. By the way, there was no signature to these. So it's coming from the GA. For what it's worth, Pádraig O'Keefe was the General Secretary at the time. Now, Pádraig O'Keefe at this point is a grizzled GA administrator with decades and decades behind him. He's seen the Morris Gorhams of this world come and go. And the GA still stands tall alongside the church and the establishment political parties as the pillars of this society. And he is not, and I'm not saying Pádraig O'Keefe wrote this.
Don't forget, as we, the circles, we keep coming back. Pádraig O'Keefe is the Archduke O'Hara who expelled the president for attending a soccer game.
Precisely.
A president who came from 3 or 4 miles from from his home place.
Exactly. The neighbour over the road. So they've seen these things come and go, and they're not backing off. He says, well, I'm sorry, I'm making this sound like Pádraig O'Keefe wrote the letter. I don't know that for sure. It's coming from the GA. But we can only assume that it went out with the imprimatur of the secretary, the general secretary. So it reads, for 27 years, it has been an unbroken tradition that the people of Ireland should be provided with an uninterrupted commentary on both Railway Cup finals. This year, Radio Éireann has broken with tradition and insisted on a fundamental deviation by introducing intermittent commentaries on an alien game into the Gaelic programme. This is like something from Mailbag. I feel like I'm one of Arthur Murphy's voices.
We actually should. We should get Arthur Murphy on to read this.
We should do. We should. Outraged from Tyrrell's Pass. The GA refused to be a party to such a feature because by doing so, they will be false to their tradition and principles. On the same grounds, they refused to interrupt the home broadcast of the Railway Cup hurling final with an interim commentary of an alien game. So it basically ended up in the heel of the hunt that you got your live commentary of the football.
I've just got this vision of Dahlia being packed out to watch little green men playing football.
Oh, yeah. Mars A versus Mars B. So it ended up anyway with the football final from Croker being broadcast live and the soccer being broadcast and no hurling at all. Now, I would have to say that I do think that must have played a role in this particular set of Railway Cup finals getting a record attendance, because it must have got a bump because guys weren't going to be able to hear the hurling on the radio, so they would have come up to see it. Also the fact that 1953 had delivered a classic hurling final apparently between Leinster and Munster. So 49,023 people turned up, record. The previous record, Ciaran, was 41,416 in 1952. So you're talking about a jump of nearly, about 7,500 or something like that on the record. Now, you would have heard legends like, there would used to be 60,000 at Railway Cups. 49,000 is as high as it got, but that's good. Like
that's a great attendance.
It's a great attendance. The only pity was it wasn't graced by a decent match because the hurling was dire. Leinster won it 9-5. It's like a bad rugby game. Christy Ring was held by Jim
three
Hogan.
penalties and
Three penalties. Yeah, exactly. Christy Ring, Ring was held by Jim Hogan of Kilkenny. So he was kind of out of the game. Leinster won the football 1-7 to 1-5. And, that was it. So that was the peak. Now we're on the downslope. Now they got a warning, Ciaran. They did get a warning about what might happen if they meddle with this too much. So in 1959, it was the 75th anniversary of the GAA, and they decided, as part of the celebrations, to shift the Railway Cups to June to make it the centrepiece of the celebration. Right? They were going to make a big deal out of them. But when they did, only 25,000 people turned up. So that's 5 years after the monster attendance. Barely half turn up in June when they shifted out of St. Patrick's Day, which tells you exactly how important St. Patrick's Day is as an anchor to this particular thing. Now, we went through there decade by decade. So, we've seen the decline. So, by 67, you're still getting 30,000, 1967. So it's not too bad. One of the great kind of, I suppose, I'm going to say myths about why the Railway Cup declined was because Christy Ring retired. Because again, people didn't see Ring on the television; they only read about him in the newspapers and read the reports and were told legends of what people saw. So the opportunity to go and see him was huge. So he would have been a huge crowd draw. But I do think that the idea that Ring retiring was synonymous with the decline of the Railway Cup, it doesn't quite. Yes and no.
Love GAA history? Then you love going deeper with Over the Bar's Cordia Club membership. For just €5 a month, you'll get exclusive member-only episodes and series, early ad-free access to the main podcast, plus detailed show notes, a newsletter, and the chance to have your questions answered. Join Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara as they uncover the stories, the legends, and the questions that shaped our games. Don't just listen, be part of the club. Join now at overthebar.club.
So his last year playing is 1963. There's 17,000 at that game. It's the first ever draw. 5-5 each between Munster and Leinster, and Ring scores a goal and a point. He plays the replay. There's barely 12,500 at it. And he's gone after that then. He doesn't play again for Munster. 1964, the number is back up to 23,000. 65, it goes up to 30. It's nearly 31,000. Back down in 66 to 20. So it's up and down. 67 is 22,000. In 90,
these are still big attendances. These would be provincial championship attendances.
These are perfectly serviceable attendances. Like when we get on to the last 20 years of the Railway Cup's existence, all they wanted then was a stable 10,000 people to turn out for the thing, and they could keep it going. Like 22,000, 30,000, it's fine. Like even in 1968, a blizzard hit Croke Park on Patrick's Day. There was a band from Albany, New York, Ciaran, the Ancient Order of Hibernians. I can only imagine they were kilted for the occasion.
They'll have been at home in the cold.
Well, they would have. That's true, actually. I was just thinking of they were surely kilted for the occasion. I can only imagine the horrors that were visited on them, and they're trying to keep their bagpipes warm out on the field. But anyway, but even then, 11,150 people still turned up, and that was considered not great, right? But so the Ring effect is limited, I would say. One major effect, though, massive effect, is media related, and that is live TV broadcast. So from 1962, the Railway Cup finals are broadcast every year on St. Patrick's Day. And I've just mentioned there a blizzard. What you find when you go back and look at all these finals, the weather is just unconscionably awful. It's either biting cold, or there's a blizzard, or there's driving rain, or there's a wind blowing in a certain direction that's just making a mock of the whole thing, or the pitch is churned up like they ran sheep and cattle through it beforehand, or there's one game is dire and the other one is decent, or whatever. There's always something. Whereas if you've been to a few of those and you're going, no, it's a day off and I've got this box in the corner, I'm going to flick that on and I'm going to see what this is like, this O'Hare lad. I'm going to listen to me Hall O'Hare, see what he's any good in the TV after all the years listening on the radio. And people start to do that. So that, I think, is huge.
And it creates within the GAA hierarchy a sense that, like, we've gone full swing now from 1926 where, you know, they're complaining about media coverage. Now they're getting it. This creates a concern that television is something to be feared because it reduces their attendances.
Precisely. And it's something that they have talked about to this very day. Now, I don't think we can draw a direct line from the impact of TV on the Railway Cup to that mentality, but it's there. It happened. They can point to it. There are other things though. The national leagues do start to be taken more seriously by the public and by teams. So that starts to draw away. I mentioned before, we mentioned the club finals. The club finals start to be seen in and around the springtime. In the early years, it starts in 1971, I think, 70 or 71. And the early finals are peppered all over the year. They're kind of shoehorned in wherever they can be played. But gradually they start to kind of be seen to be played in the springtime. So 1974, for example, again, the weather was awful, terrible, awful rain. And the football final was diabolical on Patrick's Day. But Ciaran, they didn't have the hurling and the football on the same day. So on the St. Patrick's Day itself, they have the football final, diabolical, as I say. But the curtain raiser is the All-Ireland Club Hurling Final between Rathnewer and Blackrock from Cork. Rathnewer being from Wexford, of course. A draw, and again, judging by the reports, an absolute classic. Also noticeable, there's only 4,000 at the game. This now was 1974. It's the smallest crowd at a Railway Cup final since 1927, since the beginning, 4,000. And there's a club hurling final involved. The following day, the hurling final, the Railway Cup hurling final, is atrocious. And they double it up with the club football final between Clonagale from Lurgan and UCD. And there's only a couple of thousand at it. So now we're on the slide. And we start to see the club final starting to crowd the plate. They're being played on the 16th of March or the 18th, the 15th, all this sort of thing. Now, they get the odd little bump here and there. Like Jimmy Barry, I have to mention this because this is amazing. In 1975, Jimmy Barry Murphy turns out for Munster playing football and scores 4 goals. It's a new scoring record, right? But he does that the day after he wins an All-Ireland Club hurling title with St. Finbarrs. So again, 16th of March, the hurling final was on. 17th is the Railway Cup football final. That's also the same. It's a double header. They put the Railway Cup hurling and football back together. Eddie Kerr wins a record 8 medal. He matches Mick Mackey's record that was achieved with Munster. This again, 6,650, lowest crowd ever recorded for a double header Railway Cup final. So that's 1975. So the key moment, I think, Ciaran, comes in 78. So in 1978, and by the way, I should mention, in 77 they get 8,000 people to the finals in Croke Park, and this is the moment they decide to take it out of St. Patrick's Day and actually take the hurling out of Croke Park. So the hurling final is played on the 7th of May in Páirc Uí between Munster and Leinster. Now, I can see it. I can see it coming. Go on, give me your theory. Why?
Páirc Uí finished around 1976, heavily debt-laden Cork County Board, perhaps needing some major events.
Exactly.
Could I be in the ballpark, maybe?
I think you have to be. But the problem for Cork County Board was that the Railway Cup they were looking for happened 20 years before. The Railway Cup they got now drew a crowd of less than 3,000 to Páirc Uí and led to just outcry of like, oh, what's the point? Between 3,000 and 4,000 turned up at the football final, which was played on a random Sunday in April at Croke Park. And by the way, remember I mentioned that the Railway Cup finals were your fixture TV event every St. Patrick's Day. 1978, RTE chose to broadcast the Monaco Grand Prix because there was no Railway Cup. So, again, there's choice. If the GA make a choice, well, then the media have to make a choice. So you've lost your spot. So by 78, I think the combination now of an increase in the interest in the league, by the 1980s, the club finals are really now, they're like, the end of a cricket test match where you've got you got to get one more guy out and you've got like about 7 fielders in around the wicket and you're just trying to catch him out.
You think I could get to the end of a cricket test match?
You should try it. You'd enjoy it. So they're all in there trying to catch him, just to get this done. The club finals are like that every year. They're right on top of the Railway Cup now. And the crowds that are turning out now for the club finals are highlighting the lack of crowds for the Railway Cup finals. So it's dying. It's dying. It needs something. In 1988, there's a commitment at Congress, and this actually tells you, in a nutshell, the story of the Railway Cup from here on. There's a commitment to get the Railway Cup back to St. Patrick's Day. They leave that GA Congress going, yeah, in 1989, we're going to play it on St. Patrick's Day again and get this right. Keep in mind, Ciaran, as I mentioned earlier, the club finals had been installed on Patrick's Day by 87. So, no, we're going to put them back. It ends up being played in 1989 in the autumn and gets withdrawn completely from the calendar in 1990. So all the fine talk of 88 and the respect and the doff of the cap and all the happy memories from 30 years previously, it amounts to nothing. And that is the issue going forward. The club finals are now ensconced firmly in St. Patrick's Day. The leagues are a thing. Training regimes are changing. The media has changed. There's far more coverage of games. You can see guys now, on highlights on the Sunday game, all of these things. The Railway Cup we have all-star teams. Like you mentioned, we have all-star teams touring and playing games. So the need for the Railway Cup it's really, well, who wants it?
Now, I must reveal a guilty pleasure.
Oh God! Is this? Wait now. Is this the kind of conversation you want to have off air and then doing a totally different podcast?
I've always loved the Railway Cup, and I would have attended it during its worst days.
Oh, I mean, please tell.
I could tell you stories. Now, one of the big benefactors it's had has been Martin Donnelly. He actually presented new trophies in 2001. But I have been at Railway Cup finals that were played in Parnell Park and drew a decent crowd because the lights go on, the crowd comes in. I recall driving to work on a Railway Cup semi-final, I think in Loughrea. And there, I had plenty choice with the parking spot for the car. I'll put it that way. I also recall working on a live semi-final in Killarney once and having to run onto the field to ask the recently outgoing president of the GAA who was wearing certain numbers in the substitutes because it wasn't in the programme.
By the way, just to clarify, was Jarlath Burns playing or coaching?
He was playing, so I actually went onto the field to ask him. But and for a long time, players still enjoyed it. But as you say, the calendar got busy. If you were involved in club championship, you couldn't commit to it. No. The training regimes changed. The back door in both championships ultimately was the death knell for it. The concept itself, I think, is a great concept. If you could find a window where you can put the best players from every county out, terrific. But there just isn't a window there for it anymore. And it did get tossed from pillar to post over the years in an attempt to retain it. And probably the best attempt at running it was that recent kind of FRC sandbox games. And that was a novelty for the rules more so than the fact that we got to see the best players from each province lining out together again.
Exactly. And you've outlined all the issues there in a nutshell. I mean, you talk about trying to find, and by the way, I think we might have a proposal, so we'll leave that till the very end, right? But like between 85 and 2015, you talk about the calendar. Like they tried playing the competition in February, March, April, October, November, December. So I mean, obviously you can't play it during the championship months. So they've essentially tried every other month apart from January, right? In that period,
they tried playing it overseas.
They absolutely did. They took it to Rome in 2003, but they barely got 1,000 people to the final. Like, like they got 100 people to a football final in Carrigan-Shannon one year. They got 560 odd people to a Leinster-Munster hurling final in 2016. I remember doing a piece long time ago and doing the sum total, like for 2 days of football and hurling semi-finals and finals in 2001 was 285. Connacht and Ulster played a hurling semi in Tullamore in front of 50 people, 50 one year. Now, look, I'm going to stop there because it's kind of like riddling a corpse. You know, there's no point in expending this amount of ammo on this, because I think it's fairly clear why it's like a lot of things. It just lost its place in the calendar, in the schedule, in how we consume our games, in how players prepare, train and play the games, and how managers manage teams, and how, you know, the freedom that they give their players, and the availability that players would have to play these games at a time when, you know, rest now is as important as training. So I mean, the idea of going and playing a random representative game and risking injury and all the rest of it is just not something they can seriously consider. So I mean, I think in particular for hurling, probably the cohort of players that it has let down most is those who now play in the secondary and tertiary competitions. Because historically, you would have had players from weaker counties whose greatest moment came in a Railway Cup. And since we've brought in the tiered hurling championship, they never get to play at the top level very often anymore. For better or worse, like, we can argue the merits of the Railway Cup and the International Rules Series actually as well. But one thing I agree 100% with you is that they have lost that representative opportunity to play at a level that if this was a professional sport, this is the level they'd be playing at, because they're that good. So they have lost that opportunity, and that is a shame. For what it's worth, just to, put a thick red line on the point where the Railway Cup disappears. In 2010, 11 and 2015, there was no competition at all. They played it once more in 2016, and in 2017, there wasn't even a debate, because obviously there had been debates down the years, tiresome enough debates about the future of the Railway Cup. But in 2017, they just didn't even put it on the calendar, and nobody said anything, and that was it. It was gone. But we do, I think you agree with me on this one, do you? We might have a possible place for a kind of Railway Cup type affair where it might slot in.
Love the free episodes of Over the Bar? Then take your passion further with the Cordia Club membership. For €5 a month, you'll unlock bonus series and member-only shows, hear the podcast first and ad-free, and get behind-the-scenes access through detailed notes, a newsletter, and Q&As. It's the ultimate GAA history experience, curated by Michael Foley and Ciaran O'Hara just for you. Upgrade your listening, support the show. Join today at overthebar.club.
Well, the moment of greatest need for me is I need my fix over Christmas, and there's very little on. I would, when the Dome is rebuilt in Bacon, if they put the Railway Cup on over a weekend in the Dome over the Christmas holidays. Now, this may not be great for players, I concede that. But my God, I'd be glued to every game.
I'd stick it on TV, stick it on even GA Plus.
Yeah. I have to
say though, that wasn't what I thought you were going to say.
You thought I was going to say, bring it to St. Louis.
That's your idea. That's not my idea. Okay, we've got two. Now it turns out we've got two ideas where we can bring the Railway Cup back. So you can vote A, Ciaran's post-Christmas blowout in the Dome, or here's my theory, right? So
this is the perfect time now for people to actually drop some comments into the feed there.
Absolutely. Drop a comment. Let us know which one of these, or do you just think, stop talking?
Give us some alternatives.
Absolutely. Or just stop talking about the Railway Cup and get on with your lives. My option, where I think it could work, and as I say, it's not a traditional iteration of it, but we have a problem at the moment with All Ireland Final Day, right? And what they're calling the presentation of the day, right? And the one thing I notice about going to games And the days in Croke Park is that if you've got a couple of games on, you'll get a crowd in, or you've got something on. So, like, for example, a couple of years ago, they had a commemorative mile race to mark, I think, the anniversary of Tom O'Riordan, God rest him, setting the mile record in Croke Park. Because there used to be a lot of athletics, obviously, in Croke Park a long time ago. Anyway, they ran a mile before one of the games, I think, or was it at half time one of the games? But anyway, the crowd stayed and watched it. They all stayed and watched it. And I was thinking to myself, do you know what? On All Ireland final day, rather than, some band or some singer-songwriter dude playing to like 6,000 uninterested people at the front of the Hogan stand, and also the Jubilee team wandering out to nobody, why don't we have like interprovincial all-star games? So like in hurling, you could have, I don't know, Connacht Ulster versus Leinster Munster, 60 minutes. Exhibition game. And the same for football.
Have you been watching footage of like these rugby matches they used to have in the 80s where it'd be Ireland-Wales versus England-Scotland or something?
Yeah, I'd actually forgotten those, but that's probably where it's coming from, deep back in the recesses. But something like that, literally all you want is something that'll bring people in. And, there is something nice, particularly in football now, about the idea of seeing really skillful, I mean, imagine on the off chance that Kerry don't make an All-Ireland final and you got a couple of Kerry lads in and a couple of Cork boys if they weren't in an All-Ireland final, just mix them up and, a couple of one or two brilliant lads from Clare and whatnot, or the Leinster combinations, or all the combinations. I just think there might be something there if you did Connacht Ulster versus Leinster Munster, or Leinster Ulster versus Connacht Munster, whatever you want. Just as something to have on as the curtain raiser to both All-Ireland finals and hurling and football, and just see how it goes. What's the worst can happen? That's my proposal anyway, to revive, to dig up out of its shallow grave the Railway Cup, to extend the hand down to the skeletal remains of the Interprovincial Championships and pull them back out again.
And why not when it is 100-year-old competition?
Exactly. Why not? What could possibly go wrong?
Famous last words.
Loads. Say every single fixture maker in the country.
All right, Mick, that was fascinating. I hope our listeners weren't overawed by all the numbers, but it does tell the story of something that was a very important competition in the Gaelic Games calendar for a very long time. So thanks for that. We know you're there now in your little apps, your Apple Podcasts and your Spotifys and all your newfangled streaming services. So while you're there, rate, like, subscribe, share, do all the good things, get the good word out. We'd love to have a few more of you listening. Until next time, folks, slán from me.
Talk to you soon.